In 1876, Colorado, Eliza Johnson's dreams shattered when her mortar groom publicly rejected her for being black. Stranded in a hostile frontier town with winter approaching, she faced certain death until a wounded doctor with his own painful past offered her shelter. Their unlikely alliance would spark a dangerous romance that challenged a town's hatred and revealed what true love really means. Before we start the video, comment where you are tuning in from. Eliza Johnson clutched her worn leather valvulize as the stagecoach rumbled into Pine Creek, Colorado. 6 months of letters exchanged with Thomas Miller had led to this moment. Her chance at a new life after her teaching position in Philadelphia had disappeared when parents complained about a colored woman educating their children. The autumn air bit at her cheeks as she stepped down onto frontier soil, scanning the small crowd for the rancher who had praised her refined penmanship and thoughtful letters. A tall man in a wide-brimmed hat stepped forward, his expression shifting from anticipation to shock as he took in her appearance. "Miss Johnson?" he asked, his voice tight. "Mr. Miller," she confirmed with a slight nod, trying to ignore the knot forming in her stomach. His face hardened. "You didn't tell me you were a Negro. This ain't what I agreed to." The words struck like physical blows as onlookers stared. Eliza stood straighter, her education and dignity the only shield she had left. "Our agreement," she began. "There is no agreement," Thomas cut her off. "I sent for a proper wife, not someone like you. You'll get no refund for your passage either. Should have been honest from the start." He turned and walked away, leaving Eliza alone as whispers circulated through the gathered townsfolk. When she approached the hotel, the proprietor blocked her entry. "We don't serve your kind here." Night found her huddled in the corner of the livery stable, hunger gnawing at her stomach, determination keeping her tears at bay. She wouldn't return east in disgrace. Somehow she would survive. Morning brought discovery in the form of a man with a pronounced limp who entered the stable for his horse. He paused upon seeing her, his dark eyes narrowing beneath a shock of black hair streaked with silver. "You're the mail orderer Bridemiller rejected," he stated flatly. Eliza rose to her feet, brushing straw from her skirt. "I am Eliza Johnson. Yes, Daniel Gray, town doctor." He studied her for a moment. "I need someone to clean my clinic. It's temporary work, but includes a room in the back. Your choice." Eliza recognized the reluctance in his offer, and that it might be her only chance. "I accept Dr. Gray." As they walked through town, she felt the stares and heard the murmurs about the half-breed doctor taking in the rejected bride. Doctor. Gray's clinic was small but orderly, though dust covered many surfaces. "People tolerate me because they need a doctor," he explained curtly. "They'll tolerate you as my assistant, nothing more. Don't expect kindness here." Eliza nodded, understanding all too well what it meant to be merely tolerated. The clinic's back room was sparse, a narrow bed, a battered dresser, and a small window overlooking an alley. Still, it was shelter and more than she'd expected after yesterday's humiliation. "There's bread and soup on the stove," Daniel said from the doorway. "Eat, then start with the waiting room. I have rounds to make." When he had gone, Eliza allowed herself one moment of weakness, sitting heavily on the bed as the events of the past day washed over her. She had sold most of her possessions to afford the journey west, believing Thomas Miller's promises of respect and security. Now she had nothing but the clothes in her val and the temporary mercy of a stranger. She straightened her spine. Self-pity would not serve her now. She had survived worse in Philadelphia after her parents died, leaving her to fend for herself in a world that valued neither her gender nor her color. She would survive this too. The waiting room was thick with dust and smelled of old tobacco and medicinal herbs. Eliza worked methodically, her education turning to the practical as she organized scattered supplies and scrubbed surfaces clean. By late afternoon the transformation was noticeable. Daniel returned as evening approached, pausing in surprise at the doorway. "You've been busy. I believe in earning my keep, Doctor Gray," Eliza replied. He nodded once, then limped past her to his examination room. Through the open door she watched him remove his coat, revealing the reason for his limp. His right leg was rigid, and when he rolled up his sleeve to wash his hands, burned scars marked his forearm. "We're wounds," he said without turning, sensing her gaze. "Gettysburg than a field hospital fire makes folks trust me less, but they have little choice out here. People fear what they don't understand." Eliza offered quietly, "and hate what they fear." Daniel finished, finally turning to face her. "You know that as well as I do, Miss Johnson. Tomorrow I'll show you how I expect things arranged. For now their stew." They ate in silence. But Eliza observed her reluctant benefactor carefully. Behind his gruff demeanor she sensed a deep exhaustion that went beyond physical pain. His hands, despite their scars, moved with practiced precision as he sliced bread and poured water. "Why did you help me?" she asked finally. Daniel Unk's dark eyes met hers. "Because no one helped me when I needed it." He stood, taking his bowl to the small sink. "Rest while you can. In this town, emergencies rarely wait for daylight." As if summoned by his words, frantic knocking interrupted the evening quiet. Daniel sighed and moved to answer it. A miner stood there cradling a young boy with a badly gashed arm. "Mining accident," the man gasped. "His first day working with me." Daniel waved them in. "All business now. Bring him to the table. Miss Johnson, fetch clean water and the antiseptic solution from the cabinet." Eliza moved without hesitation, remembering her time helping the physician who had treated her mother's final illness. As Daniel cleaned and stitched the wound, she provided steady hands and calm assistance, anticipating his needs without being asked. When the boy had been bandaged and given linum for the pain, Daniel gave her an appraising look. "You've done this before. My mother was ill for many years," Eliza explained. "I assisted her doctor often." "Good. You'll be more useful than I expected." Coming from Daniel, she suspected this was high praise. That night, lying on the narrow bed, Eliza stared at the ceiling. Her future remained uncertain, but she had shelter, food, and purpose, at least temporarily. In a strange way, Thomas Miller's rejection had led her to a place where her skills might actually be valued. Outside, snow began to fall, the first flakes of what promised to be a hard winter. Eliza pulled the thin blanket tighter around herself. She would need to earn Daniel's trust quickly, establish herself as indispensable before the weather turned truly harsh. Survival in this hostile town would depend on making herself necessary. As she drifted towards sleep, Eliza made a silent promise to herself. This rejection would not break her. Somehow, she would build a life here. Not just survive, but thrive despite everything. By November, Eliza had transformed the clinic with her methodical cleaning and organization. When Daniel wasn't watching, she pored over his medical books, absorbing knowledge with the hunger of someone denied education, yet craving it desperately. Her moment came when a miner's wife arrived with her feverish child, while Daniel was tending to an accident at the sawmill. Eliza recognized the symptoms from her reading. "It's not influenza," she told the worried mother after examination. "It's an ear infection." She prepared the exact remedy she'd seen Daniel use for such cases, explaining each step to the skeptical woman. When Daniel returned and confirmed her diagnosis, his usual stoic expression gave way to surprise. "You've been reading my medical texts," he stated that evening. "I have," Eliza admitted, chin raised in defiance. Instead of anger, a hint of approval crossed his scarred face. Medicine doesn't care about the color of the hands that heal," he said quietly. "Tomorrow I'll show you how to prepare proper compresses." As winter descended with brutal force, an early blizzard isolated Pine Creek. When influenza struck, the small clinic quickly filled with the sick and dying. Daniel's limp worsened as he worked exhausting hours, finally revealing to Eliza that his injury came from a Confederate bullet at Gettysburg. "My father was Cheyenne," he told her during a rare quiet moment as they shared coffee. "My mother was a missionary's daughter. I belong nowhere, just like you." "We belong to the work," Eliza replied, her hand briefly touching his before returning to roll bandages. The epidemic strained their resources to breaking. Eliza learned to mix medicines, set bones, and stitch wounds as Daniel taught her between patients. Her capable hands and quick mind earned reluctant respect from townsfolk who would have ignored her in healthier times. "You have a gift," Daniel told her one night as they worked side by side, a healer's intuition. "I had dreams of medical school once," she admitted, "before I understood such things were impossible for someone like me." Daniel's expression softened. Nothing is impossible, merely improbable. When Thomas Miller was carried in delirious with fever, Eliza felt Daniel Unk's eyes on her as she approached the man who had humiliated her. "I'll handle this," Daniel offered. "No," Eliza said firmly. "I'm a healer now, too." For 3 days she tended to Thomas with the same care she showed all patients. When his fever broke and recognition dawned in his eyes, his discomfort was palpable. "You saved my life," he muttered reluctantly. "It's what we do here," Eliza replied, moving on to the next patient. That night, Daniel reached for her hand across the small table where they ate their simple meal. "You are remarkable, Eliza Johnson." The touch lingered, his callous fingers warm against hers. Something shifted between them in that moment, an acknowledgment of feelings that had been growing through shared work and hardship. December brought brief respite as the epidemic waned. The snow piled high around the clinic, creating a cocoon of isolation that felt strangely peaceful after weeks of crisis. In the quiet evenings, Daniel began teaching Eliza formally from his medical texts. "Your mind is sharper than many of my classmates at Harvard," he observed as she correctly identified the bones of the hand from memory. "Perhaps, but they had the advantage of being white men." She replied, not bitterly, merely stating fact. Daniel Unk's rare smile appeared. "True, though being a half-breed hardly made my time there easier." They began sharing their histories during these sessions. Daniel spoke of growing up between two worlds, never fully accepted by either. His Cheyenne family had been killed in a cavalry raid when he was 10. His mother's religious family had taken him in, but treated him as a burden to be civilized. Only medicine had given him purpose. Eliza told him of learning to read in secret as a child, of the teacher who had recognized her intelligence and fought for her education, of her brief joy teaching before prejudice closed that door too. "Is that why you agreed to marry a stranger?" Daniel asked. "I agreed to marry a man whose letters showed intelligence and kindness," Eliza corrected. "I knew the risks of coming west, but I believed in the person I'd come to know through his word." "Thomas can write a fine letter," Daniel acknowledged, "but his character doesn't match his penmanship." "And what of your character, Dr. Gray?" Eliza asked boldly, her eyes meeting his across the lamplight. "Does it match your skill with a scalpel?" Daniel looked away first. "My character has been shaped by rejection and pain. It's not a pretty thing. Neither is an ear infection," Eliza replied. "Yet we treat it with care and patience." His startled laugh surprised them both. Christmas Eve brought heavy snow and quiet to the clinic. Eliza had secretly knitted gloves for Daniel, noticing how the cold worsened the pain in his scarred hand. She left the package outside his door before retiring. In the morning, she found a small parcel outside her own room. Inside was a beautiful leather-bound journal and fountain pen. "For your medical observations," Daniel explained awkwardly when she found him brewing coffee. "Your handwriting is better than mine, thank you," she said, touching the fine paper reverently. "No one has given me such a thoughtful gift since my father died." They spent the day in companionable silence, reading and making notes. As evening fell, Daniel built up the fire and brought out a dusty bottle of whiskey. "A toast," he said, pouring 2 small glasses to surviving another year. And to new beginnings, Eliza added. They sipped the fiery liquid, sitting closer to each other than usual. Daniel spoke of his mother's Cheyenne family, stories he rarely shared. Eliza told him of Philadelphia's free black community and her dreams of returning East someday as a physician. "You have the mind for it," he told her, his eyes warm in the fire light and the heart. The moment his hand touched her cheek felt inevitable, his face drawing closer to hers as the fire crackled in the hearth. Pounding on the door shattered the moment. A logging accident had left a man with a crushed leg. The next hours were filled with the grim work of amputation. Eliza assisting without flinching as Daniel worked to save the logger's life. By dawn, the crisis had passed. As they washed blood from their hands, Daniel looked at her with new respect. "You're a true partner now," he said quietly. "Not just an assistant." The declaration meant more than any kiss could have. January brought constant medical emergencies as winter took its toll. Mining accidents, frostbite, pneumonia, and difficult births kept them working side by side. The townspeople began to call her Miss Doctor behind her back, some mockingly, others with grudging respect. Men who had once refused to let her touch them now accepted her care when Daniel was occupied. Women sought her out specifically for certain ailments. Children came to trust her gentle hands and calm voice. "You've earned their respect," Daniel observed one evening. "Not all of them," Eliza corrected, recalling the slurs still whispered as she passed. "Enough to matter," Daniel insisted. Their growing closeness hadn't gone unnoticed. Whispers about impropriety circulated through the small town. Some patients stopped coming to the clinic. Others made crude remarks within Eliza's hearing. "Perhaps I should find other accommodations," she suggested after a particularly difficult day. "Where?" Daniel asked practically. "The hotel still won't take you, and I need you here." He hesitated before adding, "I want you here." The admission hung between them, neither quite ready to acknowledge what it meant. By February, the town council called a meeting about the impropriety of their arrangement. Word spread quickly through Pine Creek, reaching Daniel and Eliza through a sympathetic patient. "They aim to run you both out of town," the blacksmith warned them. "Miller's been stirring folks up something fierce." "We've broken no laws," Daniel said firmly. "Since when has that mattered?" Eliza asked quietly. They attended the meeting together, entering the crowded town hall to sudden silence and hostile stares. Mayor Harlow, a portly man who owed his life to Daniel's surgical skills the previous year, looked uncomfortable as he called for order. "Citizens have expressed concern about certain living arrangements in our community," he began diplomatically. Thomas Miller stood fully recovered and apparently forgetting his debt to Eliza. "Let's not mince words. We've got a Negro woman living with a half-Indian, unmarried and improper. It sets a bad example and lowers the standards of Pine Creek." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Eliza kept her expression neutral, though her hands tightened in her lap. "We've treated every person in this room or their family," Daniel stated coldly. "Yet you drive us out because of who we are." "It's indecent," Thomas insisted. "A woman of her kind living with a half-breed unmarried." "Dr. Johnson is my colleague," Daniel interrupted. "Nothing more, nothing less, though what she is to me is none of your concern, doctor," someone scoffed. She's got no training, no right to that title. The blacksmith stood unexpectedly. She saved my boy's ear infection when Dr. Gray was tending the mind collapse. Knew exactly what to do. Call her what you want, but she's got healing hands. Others spoke up, some defending, others condemning. The meeting dissolved into argument without resolution, but threats lingered in the air as they walked back to the clinic through fresh snow. "It will only get worse," Daniel said grimly once they were inside. "We knew it would come to this eventually," Eliza replied, removing her shawl. That night Daniel pulled away from Eliza's attempt to discuss what had happened. "You should leave Pine Creek when spring comes," he said flatly. "Go somewhere you can study properly. You deserve better than hiding in a backwater clinic with a man who only brings you trouble. That's not your decision to make," Eliza argued. "I won't be the reason you're harmed," he insisted. "I've seen what hatred can do. So have I," she countered. "Every day of my life, at least here, I'm doing work that matters. There are better places, safer places where someone of your intelligence could thrive. Are there where exactly is this magical place that welcomes a black woman with medical ambitions?" Eliza demanded. "I'm tired of running from hatred. I'd rather face it and build something worthwhile despite it." Daniel turned away. "I can't watch you suffer for associating with me. That's my choice to make," she insisted. "Stop trying to reject me before they can, Daniel. I've had enough rejection for one lifetime." He left without another word, retreating to his room. Their argument left the clinic's atmosphere tense with unspoken words as they treated patients the next day, their professional courtesy intact, but personal warmth absent. For 3 days they maintained this careful distance. Eliza threw herself into organizing medical supplies and studying anatomy texts. Daniel spent extra hours on house calls, returning late and leaving early. On the 4th night Eliza woke to the smell of smoke. Through her window she saw a flickering light in the street. Peering out, her heart raced at the sight of Thomas Miller and 3 men approaching with torches. She rushed to Daniel's door, pounding until he answered. "Fire!" she gasped. "Miller and his friends." Daniel reacted instantly, pulling on boots and grabbing his revolver. "Get the patient records and medical journals. I'll try to keep them back." As they gathered essential supplies, a torch crashed through the front window, igniting the curtains. Flames spread quickly to the wooden reception desk. Daniel threw open the door to confront the men. "This is your only warning, Gray," Thomas called. "Take your Negro and leave Pine Creek by morning or next time we burn you with the building. You're threatening a doctor in a town that needs medical care." Daniel replied evenly, his gun steady. "Think carefully about your next move, Miller." Another torch flew through the window behind him. Daniel shoved Eliza aside, taking the brunt of shattering glass and flames. His cry of pain brought her back to his side as embers caught his sleeve. In the street, shouts announced the arrival of others. The blacksmith and several miners ran toward the clinic, forcing Thomas and his companions to retreat into the darkness. "Get water from the well," someone yelled. A bucket line formed quickly as the townspeople, whatever their feelings about the clinic's occupants, united against the threat of fire spreading to neighboring buildings. With the flames finally extinguished, Eliza turned her attention to Daniel. His right arm was badly burned, and glass shards had embedded in his shoulder and neck when he shielded her. "Let me see," she insisted, leading him to the examination table that had survived the fire. "Not bad," he grunted, though his face was pale with pain. "Liar," she said gently, cutting away his ruined shirt. Working through the night, she extracted each shard and applied the burn salve they had so often used for miners' injuries. Daniel drifted in and out of consciousness as she worked, the pain and exhaustion finally overcoming his iron will. "I can't lose you," she whispered as she wrapped clean bandages around his arm. "I won't be rejected again. Not by you, not by this town." Morning revealed the extent of the damage. The waiting room was charred but standing. Smoke damage had blackened the walls of the examination room. but the structure itself remained intact, and their living quarters in the back had escaped the worst. The blacksmith appeared at the door with his two sons. "We've come to help rebuild," he announced. "Others will be along soon." "Why?" Eliza asked, exhaustion making her blunt. "Because we need a doctor," he replied simply, "and because decent folks don't stand for this kind of meanness, no matter what they might say at town meetings." Throughout the day, a steady stream of townspeople arrived with lumber, tools, and food. Not everyone in Pine Creek, it seemed, shared Thomas Miller's hatred. By sunset, the broken windows were boarded up, the charred furniture removed, and plans made for proper repairs. Daniel, feverish but conscious, watched from his bed as Eliza coordinated the volunteer efforts. "You were right," he admitted when she brought him broth and willow bark tea for the pain. "Running solves nothing. Rest now," she said, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. "We'll talk when you're stronger." 2 days later, word came that the town marshal had arrested Thomas Miller and his accomplices. The marshal himself visited the clinic to take their statements, his manner gruffly respectful toward both of them. "Judge won't be through for a month, but they'll stay locked up till then," he promised. What they did was criminal, plain and simple. When he had gone, Daniel sat up in bed for the first time. His color better, though his movement was still painful. "Eliza," he began, then hesitated. "I need to say something." She sat beside him, her hands steady as she checked his bandages. "I'm listening. I was wrong to push you away. I thought I was protecting you, but really I was protecting myself." He caught her hand with his uninjured one. "I've spent my life caught between worlds belonging nowhere. When I began to feel that I might belong with you, it frightened me." Eliza's throat tightened. "I understand fear, Daniel, but I also understand courage. You've shown me both. I want you to stay," he said simply, "not just as my colleague, as my partner in every sense." "I choose my own path," she replied, echoing her words from their argument. "And I choose this place, this work," she leaned closer, "this life with you if you'll have me." Daniel Unk's eyes, so often guarded, filled with emotion. "I never belonged anywhere until you never had anyone fight to stay with me." When their lips finally met, it felt like coming home after a long journey. Outside, Pine Creek continued its slow evolution, some minds changing, others remaining fixed in their prejudice. But within the walls of their damaged clinic, Eliza and Daniel had found something neither had dared hope for: acceptance, purpose, and love strong enough to withstand the flames of hatred. The town marshal called a public meeting 1 week after the fire. Daniel, his arm still bandaged, but able to walk with Eliza's assistance, insisted on attending. They entered the crowded town hall to a mixed reception. Some faces friendly, others cold, many simply curious. "Thomas Miller and his accomplices are in my jail," the marshal announced, standing at the front of the room, "and they'll stay there until the circuit judge arrives next month." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Mayor Harlow cleared his throat nervously. "This unfortunate incident has brought to light deeper issues in our community," he began diplomatically. "While opinions may differ on certain social matters, we cannot tolerate violence against any citizen of Pine Creek." The town banker Harrison Wells stood up. "Dr. Gray and Dr. Johnson have saved too many of us to be treated this way. My own wife would have died in childbirth without them this winter. She ain't a real doctor," someone called from the back of the room. Blacksmith rose immediately. "She saved my son when no one else could," he countered. "Don't care what papers she has." The debate continued, voices rising and falling. Not everyone spoke in their favor, but enough did to shift the mood of the meeting. Plans emerged to help repair the clinic and establish a rotation of men to keep watch against further violence. "I won't pretend everyone in Pine Creek will change their thinking," the marshal told them as people began to disperse. "But most folks understand the value of having medical care, whatever their other feelings might be." Back at the clinic, Daniel watched Eliza organize the donated supplies that had arrived throughout the day. "Progress," he observed quietly, "of a sort, more than I expected," she admitted, "though I suspect it's your skills they value more than mine." They called you doctor. Johnson, Daniel pointed out. I heard it. Several times today. A small smile crossed her face, only to patients who needed confidence in my abilities. It suits you. His good hand caught hers. We should make it official. Eliza raised an eyebrow. Are you proposing a medical partnership, Dr. Gray? That he agreed, and more if you're willing. Her fingers tightened around his. I believe I am. As March arrived, bringing the first hints of spring to the mountains, Daniel's arm healed enough for him to resume most duties. Together they established a routine dividing patients according to their strengths. Daniel handled more complex surgeries while Eliza excelled with children, pregnant women, and chronic conditions. Word spread beyond Pine Creek that the colored lady doctor had special ways with difficult cases. Patients began traveling from neighboring settlements, some skeptical, until they experienced her care firsthand. Thomas Miller's trial before the circuit judge resulted in a 6-month sentence for arson and threatening with deadly intent. The punishment struck many as lenient, but Daniel merely shrugged when told the news. At least it gives us time to establish ourselves more firmly, he said practically. In April, a letter arrived addressed to Daniel from a doctor, Samuel Cartwright, in Chicago. Eliza recognized the name from medical journals they'd studied together. Daniel read it twice before handing it to her. My old classmate from Harvard, he explained. I wrote to him about you. The letter outlined a remarkable opportunity. A new medical program in Chicago was cautiously accepting women and doctor. Cartwright had connections that might help overcome the barrier of race. You should go, Daniel said, watching her expression carefully. Leave Pine Creek, leave you. Eliza shook her head. After everything we fought for here, not forever, Daniel clarified. A year, perhaps 2, enough to get the formal training and credentials no one can question. Eliza placed the letter on the desk between them. What about the clinic? What about us? We should go, Daniel emphasized. I've been offered a teaching position in surgical techniques. We'll study and work there, then return together. Together, Eliza repeated the possibility taking shape in her mind. A real doctor at last. You're already a real doctor, Daniel corrected. This just gives you the papers to prove it to doubters. They were married in May by the town's minister, a quiet ceremony attended by their small circle of supporters. The blacksmith's wife had SWN Eliza a simple white dress, and Daniel wore a new suit ordered from Denver. Do you think people will accept us more easily now? Eliza asked as they walked back to the clinic that evening. Daniel squeezed her hand. Some will, some won't, but we've proven we belong here together. That's what matters. They departed for Chicago in June, leaving the clinic in the care of a young doctor from Denver who needed rural experience. The stagecoach journey was far different from Eliza's first arrival in Pine Creek. This time, she traveled with purpose, security, and love. Chicago's medical college presented its own challenges. Eliza was one of only 3 women admitted to the program and the only person of color. Some professors refused to address her directly. Others tested her far more rigorously than her white male counterparts. Daniel faced skepticism as well, his native heritage mocking him as an outsider despite his Harvard education. But together they persevered, excelling in their studies and quietly breaking barriers. This is what I feared for you in Pine Creek, Daniel admitted one evening as they reviewed case notes in their small apartment. The constant battle to prove your worth. The difference, Eliza replied, is that here the battle has a clear end. Pass the examinations, receive the diploma. In Pine Creek, the test never ended, and yet we're going back, Daniel observed. Eliza smiled, because there we're needed. Here we're merely tolerated like everywhere else. 2 years passed swiftly. Eliza graduated with honors her medical degree, a document she sometimes touched in wonder. Daniel completed his surgical fellowship, learning new techniques to bring back to their frontier practice. When they returned to Pine Creek in the summer of 1878, they found a town somewhat changed. A railroad spur had brought new businesses and residents. Their clinic, maintained by the young doctor, had expanded to include a small ward for overnight patients. Dr. Gray, the blacksmith, greeted them warmly. "Welcome home, home." The word resonated as they settled back into a community that had learned, however reluctantly, to accept them. Thomas Miller had left town after serving his sentence, moving further west. Some prejudices remained, but now they practiced medicine with the confidence of formal credentials and proven results. Their expanded clinic served people from surrounding towns and nearby reservations. Daniel's heritage bridging cultural divides that had once seemed impassable. Eliza developed a special focus on women's health, providing care many had never received before. One autumn afternoon, Eliza received a letter from a young woman in Baltimore inquiring about conditions for colored people in the West. The woman, a trained nurse, was considering following Eliza's path. "What will you tell her?" Daniel asked, reading over her shoulder. Eliza considered carefully before dipping her pen. "There is hardship here," she wrote, "but also possibility. There are those who will see only what they fear in you, but others who will see what you truly are." She signed it with both her names, Eliza Johnson Gray, M.D., a testament to the journey from rejection to recognition. That evening, standing on the clinic's porch with Daniel, Eliza watched the sunset paint the western sky. "The Wilson baby should arrive any day now," she remarked, leaning against his shoulder. "Our third delivery this month," he noted, his arms slipping around her waist. In the deepening twilight they stood together, living proof that rejection need not be the end of a story. For Eliza Johnson Gray, once a mail-order bride rejected for being black, it had been merely the beginning of a life more meaningful than she had ever dared to dream.